We're parents, teachers, and educators, and like you, we're passionate about restoring our culture for Christ. This is Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education.
Welcome again to Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. Today we have a wonderful favorite daughter of Veritas, and you'll get to hear why. Her name is Erica Esterly. Erica, welcome.
Thank you for having me, sir. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. Erica, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the reasons why we thought it a good idea to have you join us.
My name's Erica Esterly. I am now at West Point. I'm going into my last year of school. Before that, though, I was in Veritas from 6th grade until 12th grade. And throughout all of it, I've been a swimmer, and I now swim at the collegiate level.
Okay. And tell us about your family and where you live.
I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. I have a younger brother and sister who are also both in Veritas. And
your sister isn't anymore. She just graduated.
Yeah, true. She's moved on now. She's going to Drexel this fall. But we both have done Veritas since we moved to Arizona.
You used to spend time, I think the summers, in the Philadelphia area where you lived originally, probably the area that you were born. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you were born?
Yep. So we would come back in the summers.
And I was always fascinated to watch your cross-country treks from Arizona to Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania to Arizona, because your parents made them more than just a long drive. Tell us a little bit about what they did there.
Yeah, so when we were younger, and it was, we were smaller and we could all fit into a car, my family and I, we did these road trips from Scottsdale all the way back to Philadelphia. And my mom would call them Esterly's Eat Their Way Across America. And so we would take a different route each time. Usually my dad would plan it. And we'd just stop at, we'd either go through the South or the Midwest or maybe up north and just hit a bunch of different restaurants, national parks, battlefields, that kind of thing.
This might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but what was one of the most memorable restaurants that you ate at that you would tell the listeners, don't miss this restaurant if you get a chance?
I can't remember the exact name because I was much younger, but it was a barbecue place in Austin. And so if I can, I know my dad has a note somewhere. So if
barbecue
I can find
place in Austin, you got about 500 options.
Yeah, that was
that.
That wasn't very descriptive. But we did a barbecue route kind of thing, and those were good restaurants.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. It has always been fun interacting with your family. I would describe the Esterly family as one of those diehard families that think our folks at Veritas hung the moon. But the fact of the matter is, it is people like you and your family that have made other people feel like Veritas is a special place. And so there's kind of a mutual admiration society that we've established there. So it's fun to recognize it, though. Do you remember how your family first became familiar with Veritas?
Yeah, I think we had just moved out to Arizona, and we had kind of moved at like an awkward time. It was like October, November, December time of the year. And we were considering schooling options, and the brick and mortar options that we had looked at, some of them were good, but they weren't exactly what my parents were looking for. And I remember my mom was just doing a lot of research on what would be a good, like a rigorous education, but like classically Christian minded if possible, and something that would, allow us to do it no matter where we are in the country. And she came across Veritas, and
interesting.
And from there, the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you lived in Philadelphia and our office is down the road, only 70 miles. You had to go to Arizona to find us.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about that. We got a little marketing challenge, I guess. Interesting. So you you started taking online classes and using Veritas recommendations when you were, did you say 6th grade or 7th grade?
6th grade.
6th grade. Okay. So tell us about your experience at Veritas, the meaningful points. Well, let's keep, I don't want to make you answer a question that takes you 10 minutes to answer. Tell us about the start. What was it like to move into taking classes online and to actually have school show up at home rather than you have to go to it?
Right. That was definitely a bit of a transition for me since I had done, brick and mortar schooling for my elementary school. But we kind of got into a system pretty quickly. My siblings are both younger than me. And so we adjusted, to being in a different place. We were using Veritas materials. We weren't in online classes yet. We were doing the—
Oh, your first year was not online classes?
No.
Okay, glad you clarified that. Yeah.
Yes. So my first year, maybe my first 2 years, were mostly traditional. My mom was using the books. We were trying out the omnibus book lists and doing—
So when you say traditional homeschooling, mom teaches at home, which is the simple definition of what I would call traditional homeschooling.
Traditional homeschooling,
yeah.
And so we were doing that, and my mom was really enjoying it. It was giving us a lot of flexibility with to look at swim and all the different extracurriculars that my family was doing at the time. And then, as I got older, it kind of transitioned more into online schooling. And then by 8th or 9th grade, I was doing fully online classes.
Yeah. In fact, I think, I don't remember if it was more than one grade, but I know you were the student body president.
Yes, I was.
Maybe in 9th grade and maybe more than that. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It was 8th and 9th grade, I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, I remember we give students the opportunity to do their own campaign, so to speak, and it's kind of fun. And your videos had a lot invested in them. It looked like you had a whole production team. You didn't have to go to Hollywood to do that, did you?
No. No, I just had my mom here, and she did basically.
There you go. So what was your educational experience prior to 6th grade, presumably, I guess, in Philadelphia?
I was enrolled in Delaware County Christian School. So we, and my sister as well, did a couple of years there, but my brother pretty much began with Veritas and will end with Veritas. So I enjoyed my elementary school education. It was a Christian school, so it was not as rigorous as Veritas ended up being, but it gave me a great groundwork of, Christian environment. It was definitely a transition going from a brick and mortar school to homeschooling, but it was a transition for my whole family. But, we made it work.
Tell us a little bit about, open up the front door and let us look inside the house. Tell us what that looked like in some meaningful ways.
It was a little chaotic at first. We were moving 3,000 miles, so we had the books everywhere, the boxes everywhere. It was as chaotic as you can imagine it. It was not like the organized books of Veritas curriculum yet.
Like what's over your shoulders now.
Right. We've refined this over the years.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a little bit chaotic. We were just adjusting to a new environment, new friends. And then on top of that, my mom was trying to get the hang of doing school and, single-handedly kind of teaching the three of us. And so it was a little bit chaotic at first, but I think I stepped quickly into the role of, oldest child and helped my siblings would, practice their grammar jingles and, do all their little cards and everything with them. So I think we quickly got a flow down that worked for us.
Yeah. Your parents both have, I know this firsthand for having talked to them over the years, both valued an academically rigorous education as well as a distinctively Christian education. And I think that was a great appeal to them. I know that was a great appeal to them.
Yep.
How did you find that in terms of workload and benefit from the hard work that it required?
Mm-hmm. I mean, so I had to adjust to it at first. It was, you have to be disciplined to do. Homeschooling does require a certain amount of self-discipline, which if you don't have, I think that I had already, had that instilled just from my years of doing swimming at a really high level. And so I was at a pretty young age and I already was having good time management skills because I would, swim in the morning, go back, do my school, do my homework, classes, go back and swim again, come back and do more school. And so for me, like it really instilled, like, I think that that's what my parents wanted as well, was something that would help us start ingraining discipline and, enjoying as well, like what we're doing. And so to me, the most fruitful part of Veritas, as I got older, I got, really engaged with the material, moving through the omnibus levels or going through, the rhetoric classes. Like I have really fond memories of becoming so engaged in the material that it became easy for me to manage, even when I had a very, busy and high-paced schedule. I was really invested in what I was learning.
That's really neat. How did it affect? Well, what are some of the most significant things that you learned that changed you as a person as part of 6 years of online classes?
Mm-hmm. I would say there is a lot, there's a lot you read just from the reading, from doing the class discussions. I think I learned a lot from interacting with the other students as well. And so what I found was really interesting is we could come together as a body of, fellow-minded Christian students and still have disagreements and approach it very respectfully and intellectually. And so, I think back to my rhetoric or omnibus discussions where the question would be posed to engage us in discussion and people would approach it from different points of views, but it never became, disrespectful or it was always, all the discussions I can remember, even from a young age, we were being respectful and we were learning. It was,
Gracious.
intellectually stimulating. And so for me, that was the coolest thing I think I learned was, one was being able to see, people who had similar backgrounds to me, or, they were also learning and being able to talk to other Veritas kids who are also athletes or something, but also being able to interact with people who had very different backgrounds than me. So that was one thing I think I learned. The other thing I definitely learned is, I would say, like, the importance of the material we were learning, not just from an academic side, but like biblically, how it kind of stimulated my faith journey as well and helped me go in a specific direction, that then later on helped me in college when I was struggling a little bit to find some sort of grounding in my faith. I was relying on a lot of what I had learned at Veritas, and I found that to be a
That's
comfort.
great to hear. Yeah. What impact how would you describe the impact of being able to be in a class with like-minded people, but people from very different cultures? I'm aware many people are of the culture of the Northeast, Philadelphia, which is not really Northeast, but it's certainly a Northern culture. Then you've got the culture of Scottsdale, and a very different culture than Philadelphia. That's sometimes a seasonal culture. It was for you all for a time, but also the international kids, especially them. How did that impact the quality and the experience?
I think it definitely, it added an extra layer of like very interesting complexity to, classes, because you'd be logging on and like I'd be coming straight from swim practice. I might be, starting the first couple of minutes of class in the car. And then, there'd be someone maybe in Hawaii and they're waking up even earlier than me, but, they're talking about how they're on the beach doing their class, and then there'd be someone coming in from Singapore, and for them it's like 11 p.m.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just a really unique experience because I got to see a little bit into the lives of people who lived like very different lives. And so I think in every class that I had, there was always a couple people that were either, up super north, or they were on a different continent, or, it was really cool because we all had the same intentions, coming into class or going through our studies, but to be able to interact with people who lived such different lives, or, had such different backgrounds, I think that was, it helped me open up my mind too about like how when you're interacting with different people, like the best thing you can do is just like listen and learn. And so I found that to be a really cool part of my Veritas education, for sure.
My educational experience, especially in high school and even into college, was somewhat of a necessary evil. That's what you do because you're 18 years old or 15 years old. That's what you do. You go to college, that's what you do because you have an end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not motivated. I did not enjoy the educational process. It made it possible for me to be involved in extracurriculars. For me, that was sports in particular, a couple sports in high school, and then just golf in college. And so it was just part of doing things. But my sense is at Veritas that most students have a very different attitude. How would you describe the typical Veritas student in terms of their attitude towards education and towards their class?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think you can tell just, from my experience being in classes, is that people have a lot of, my classmates we would all have different, motivations or interests. And maybe, one person is interested in medieval history, another person's interested in, 18th century history. But what was cool is that everyone had some vested interest, whether it be in the theology, the history, the literature that was being taught, beyond just, I have to do this class because I need credits for college or whatever it might be. And I think you could really see that come out in class discussions because everyone would be engaged, everyone would be participating, and everyone had like new information that they could add to the discussion because the way that the class material is set up is that it like was genuinely interesting to people. And so it wasn't just, like another check the box kind of class. It was like, oh, this is, a time for so-and-so to share that, their interest in whatever it is. And so I don't know, I think that helped us all learn better because it wasn't, the teachers weren't pulling teeth to get us to participate.
Yeah. I got to tell you, it is what gets me up in the morning. And that's to hear students talk about loving going to school and loving what they're learning.
Yeah.
That keeps me going.
Definitely.
I'm getting there again. So sorry for being so self-indulgent there, but thanks for confirming.
Of course.
Now you have been very involved in extracurriculars. I know that you have been a swimmer at a championship level. Are you swimming? You're swimming at West Point.
Mm-hmm.
So you're swimming in college, and you swam in high school while taking online classes.
Yep.
I think this is a very significant thing for many people who say, how do we do some of these other things that my kids want to do? What made that work? How did that come about that made it so that it wasn't an issue? You got to do what you wanted to do. Your parents were able to make it work without too much difficulty. Maybe it was difficult. I shouldn't assume that. Tell us about that experience for bringing your own extracurricular activities to bear where Veritas couldn't.
Right. It definitely, my schedule in high school was very busy. Like we were doing piano competitively. We were swimming at a really high level. And then on top of that, obviously doing Veritas classes. And I was in highest honors. So it was
highest
also,
honors, so they're listening, is a level of diploma that students are invited into that's beyond an honors program that we have also.
Right. So it was, they were difficult classes. But what I found was that, well, to start, like we had just talked about, Veritas, the class material was not, to me, it was not a bore. Some of it, maybe I'm not a math person. So like when I was kind of like, God, calculus, dragging my feet a little bit. But for the most part, I was excited to do my work I would love, every time we had an omnibus assignment, like I was excited to do it. So it helped, one, that I was engaged and I was interested in the material. And then I kind of, as I progressed and my schedule got busier, I just got better at time management. My parents helped me, but I was motivated intrinsically, to accomplish my goals in swimming, and to accomplish my goals with school and piano and all those things simultaneously. And so I think that that was instilled in me, and I, had that innate desire to succeed in a couple of different routes. And so that's what helped me. And as well as my parents, obviously encouraging me to succeed. But it definitely took a lot of, motivation from myself to wake up early for those practices and then go to class and do all that.
Yeah. What do you know about how your parents found the opportunities? What would be advice that you could provide for other people to say, well, I love the idea of Veritas, I love the idea of online classes, but how do I find the things that my kids may want to do? Maybe that's a foolish question because the internet's an obvious place. And everybody has neighbors that are playing travel team soccer and that sort of thing. So, but just give some thoughts that you have on that.
Right. Yeah, I think so. My parents, when we were younger, we tried a bunch of different sports. So at one point I was doing gymnastics and soccer and swimming and tennis. And I think for me, that was the best way to experiment. I think that a sport is really helpful for the development of youth. And I think it actually made me do better in school because it forced me to be hardworking and manage my time and do all these things. And so I would recommend to parents, like, have your kids, try a couple of different sports, and see which one they have a natural lean to. And for me, that was swimming. And then my siblings, followed in my footsteps. But it's the great thing about Veritas, again, is that you can do it anywhere. You can I would, take my books to practice. And if I had a couple of minutes waiting for my siblings, was doing homework there, and take it to travel meets. We would pack our books and like go to Portland for our swim meets. And so the great thing is that Veritas gives you the accessibility to try different things with your kids. And that's what worked for our family.
When you're competing at a regional or national level and travel is a part of that, it really is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
This internet and these online classes to just plug in, doesn't matter where you are.
Right.
You do it in the car with internet there. And be part of a class as if you're sitting in front of a computer in your home. You mentioned swimming several times. That was a really big thing for you in high school and now in college. Being a big thing for you, or having won a state championship or something like that, is not capturing what you've really accomplished there. And I want to feature that, because I'm really, I'm proud of what you've accomplished. You've done 2 swims that many people don't even know about. But when they do, if they're like me, their first response, how do you do that? One of them is called the 40 Bridges swim. Tell us what that is.
So 40 Bridges is a double circumnavigation of New York City. So in 2021, I completed 20 bridges, which is 1 loop, and you swim under all 20 bridges in New York City. It's 28 miles. And then this past year in 2022, I did the double loop of New York City.
So that is 56 miles swimming under 20 bridges twice without stopping.
Yes, sir.
Now, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you so that you can answer it. How long did that take?
So it took me 19 hours and 49 minutes to be exact.
For some reason, I had in my head that it was 22 hours. And you probably know this, but maybe not. But I want to tell you, wasn't it like, when did you finish? At what hour did you finish? Hour of the clock?
Finished about, it was 6 a.m. It was about 6 a.m. when I finished.
I believe the first text I got from your parents was around 2 a.m., indicating where you stood in that process and that you were at that point having a very difficult time and kind of had to punch through that. Now, I don't know if punch through, that doesn't seem to give it adequate explanation. I can't imagine. I've often described me as a sinker, not a swimmer, but I'm happy to swim across a pool. But the idea of swimming 56 miles is astounding. How many people, how many men and how many women have ever completed that?
So I believe the number is now 15 people have completed it total.
15
not sure
people in the history of the world.
And I'm not sure exactly how many women. I finished. I was the youngest by 15 years in the completion.
Really?
So yeah, yes, sir.
Really? How many women would you guess have completed? For some reason, I was thinking it was 5 or 6.
I think it's somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay, so you did that. When did you do that?
So I completed that swim in August of 2022.
August of 2022. At least you picked a month where the water was a little.
Yeah.
And then you went on to do what's called the Catalina Channel. How much time was there from the 40 bridges to the Catalina Channel?
And there's about 3 weeks in between those swims. So
what is the Catalina Channel swim?
The Catalina Channel, it's one of 3 major open water swims it's called the Triple Crown of open water swimming. So 20 bridges and the Catalina Channel.
One of the Triple Crown?
It's one of the 3.
Okay. But 20 bridges is the other one, not the double loop, the 40 bridges. So
right.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then Catalina Channel it's a channel crossing in California. So you swim from the Santa Catalina Island back to Los Angeles. And it's about depends on, it's the ocean, but it usually is around 23 miles.
Okay. We say usually, you mean because of the direction that the tide is moving?
Yeah, it can be,
current?
If you get a little bit off course, it can add.
Oh, I see. Okay.
A little bit, but yeah.
So there's a third one then, if it's a Triple Crown. What's the third race?
The third one is the English Channel.
And when are you planning to do that? I know you must be.
Yeah, July 2024.
July next year. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is that one rated in difficulty compared to the other 2?
Much more difficult.
Much more difficult than both of the other 2? Really? Why is that?
That one has it's a whole set of challenges in and of itself because it's in the waters. It's much colder. The waters in England are pretty cold no matter what time of year.
Yep.
In addition to sea life, there's a lot of, usually you come out of it with a couple of jellyfish stings and hopefully that's the extent of it. But the channel is so you swim it in like a serpentine motion because of how aggressive the tides are. So the issue is you don't really know how long exactly it's going to take you. So there's a little bit of more uncertainty with that swim, but it's also viewed as like the pinnacle of open water swimming. Like when you think of open water swimming, most people think English Channel.
Yeah. It's hard for me to imagine anything being more difficult than 20 hours of swimming for 56 miles, going under the bridge is not that big a deal. It's just it's a clever way to name it. Around Manhattan Island twice. Astounding.
Thank you, sir.
Erica, thank you for joining us today. It has been so wonderful to hear about your story, your experience with Veritas, and where you've been going from there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, sir.
Folks, this is Veritas Vox. Thank you for joining us at Veritas Vox, of course, the voice of classical Christian education. Bye-bye.